and medication, Mr. Speaker. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, about this bill is the establishment of an anti-doping results management panel. A panel of professionals drawn from doctors, lawyers, sports administrators, and former athletes, Mr. Speaker, who will sit and make final decisions on the results of tests taken from our athletes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while commending this process, I also want to challenge, Mr. Speaker, our law enforcement agencies. Mr. Speaker, sports is something for which this country should be proud of. It is something that each one of us should support. I've just heard Senator Bungoma, Mr. Speaker, alluding to a fact, and I don't doubt it, that when you were in charge of Bungoma County as a governor, you are doing certain things to enhance sports and athletics, and upon your departure, those things, the Speaker, stopped. I don't know whether the Senator of Bungoma is trying to tell you to go back to Bungoma or what he's trying to say to the Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, what I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, is that if we have administrators and leaders in this country who do not appreciate what sports can do for our children, then it's a very unfortunate situation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I have done myself, and you know it, I have started an annual half marathon race in Kitui, which started last year. We were unable to conduct it this year because of COVID, but we'll do it next year in March. Mr. Speaker, just the other day, and this is very appalling, Mr. Speaker, a young man from Kitui organizes sporting activities for young people just to keep them busy and engaged during these COVID times. And on the day that they are going to do their final matches, some overzealous police officers come and say, because of COVID, you cannot have these matches. You know, they disperse these young people from the fields, and they say they are citing a corona pandemic. The Speaker, the easiest thing to do for police officers when people gather, young people gather for sports, the easiest thing for them to do is to enforce the regulations, to ensure there is proper social distancing, to ensure that people have masks on, to ensure that there are sanitizers, to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, to the extent possible, people are facilitated to participate in these sporting events. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill and urge that all senators who are in the chamber and those who have joined virtually support this important bill. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I support.
Senator Cherargei. Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to support this bill. I think time is of essence, as we have been told by World Anti-Agency, WADA, Doping Agency, and through the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAC, which was established in 2016, Kenya having ratified in 2009 through UNESCO, and of course Kenya becoming part of the larger community of protecting the interest of our athletes. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to say most athletes, Mr. Speaker, from where I come from, my county is called the source of champions. And I think Senator Wetangula has mentioned quite a names of our legendary there. We have the latest, as he has said, people like Eunice Sum, we have people like Pamela Chelimo, and Conseslus Kipruto, the latest Eliud Kipchoge, by the way, Speaker, is my neighbor, Siringi, but and is a man who ran under 2 hours under Enos, and more than 500 million viewers and 799,000 streamed live during Enos when he was running last year. Mr. Speaker, I think it is very important that One of the serious issues that has stained athletics in this republic is because of doping. And I think it is the right time that we comply with international standards that have been provided. And fortunately, we must pass this law today because by 1st January 2021, Mr. Speaker, all these issues must be put into perspective and allow athletes to participate both local and international events and regional events. This is like a an access card that will allow athletes to participate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our athletes sacrifice a lot. I think my colleagues have tried to say that when you wake up around 5, and most of them are my friends, some of them are my age mates, when you wake up around 4:35, they work very hard. These are very young people, as my colleagues have said. Others are 17 years, others are below 30, others are below 25. They wake up very early, Mr. Speaker, even from as early as 4:30 a.m. And by 7 or 6:30 in the morning, they have finished their training, they are doing their massage. But Mr. Speaker, one of the unfortunate things that we have in this country is that the Ministry of Sports has failed, and Amina Mohammed has not been proactive. I don't know what is the reason. Because as we talk, most of our athletes, Mr. Speaker, use private training camps, like Lorna Kiplagat in Iten. We have others in Kaptagat, we have others in Kapsabet, others in Nandi Hills. Most of these training camps, Mr. Speaker, are privately owned. And yet these are people with talent. They don't have training shoes, Mr. Speaker. They don't have an opportunity of having the best, even the running shoes, as we have been told. Most of them run barefooted to be able to make it in life. But the Ministry of Sports have been lackluster. I don't know whether they are concentrating in other sports, but I have not seen any concentrating on either sports, even polo or any other form of sport, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we as a country, and I'm happy, as your senator has noted that when you were the governor, you had started building high altitude. I wish also our governors from region would realize that it is much more important of building high altitude areas or training camps for athletes, because even my current governor, Mr. Speaker, the former governor had started renovating Kipchoge Stadium, which we would name after legendary, but he has started coming back and building washrooms and toilets and changing rooms instead of finishing the stadium. So I think there is a lot of wrong priorities among other counties, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to give a good, and I know Jubilee had promised in 2013 that they would build 5 stadiums or several stadiums. We would have expected these stadiums to help, of course, as we have been told the other day that Jubilee has changed its priority, but we would have expected these stadiums would have been used as part of the training camps for the many athletes that we have in this country. Mr. Speaker, you have to note that this year that is coming to a close, just before COVID, in the road races, the billions that have been injected is over close to 7 billion that has been injected into this economy by the athletes. The road races, the winnings, they do it in, be it Japan, be it America, be it Asia, Europe, Africa. There is more than 6 billion Kenyan shillings that have been injected into this economy. Mr. Speaker, the reason some of us are so passionate about this bill, the reason some of us from North Rift are passionate is because when you go to Eldoret town, when you go to Kapsabet town, when you go to any town, because of those millions of shillings that are being winnings, you can see investments that have been done by our athletes. An example is Moses Kiptanui, Mr. Speaker, that my brother has alluded to, has invested very wisely. He is a rare breed because, Mr. Speaker, we have not started investment advice to many young people. Some of them have never seen 10,000 shillings, but they go and win 1 million shillings, and confusion comes in, and many things of this world come in. Their money are being eaten by slay queens, among other eaters in these streets, Mr. Speaker, and women and many others. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to get the advice, investment advice. You can see Moses Kiptanui has done very well. Another athlete that is little known called Martin Lel has done very well. Even Moses Tanui have invested the Grand Prix Hotel that he even had a chance of taking tea with the former President George W. Bush Sr. These are people that are injecting money to the economy. The problem we have, Mr. Speaker, are twofold. One is they like investment advice that we need the Ministry of, we would have thought the Athletics Kenya and Professional Athletics of Kenya, PAC, would have sat and give them the investment advice so that they don't win the money and they cannot know where to invest in. And I think for us who come from North Rift, we know the value of what money has done in that area, Mr. Speaker. Another issue that I would have expected is double taxation. And I want to appeal because Amina Mohammed has looked like a flower girl in that ministry. Just before her term's end, Mr. Speaker, she should at least talk to the government to avoid double taxation to our athletes. Somebody is doing winnings in maybe in Japan or you tax them, the government taxes them.
Senator Farhia, what is your... I'm just
Mr. Speaker, I want to protest. Senator Cherargei always says bad things about women. Why is it like that? Why is he calling a whole CS a flower girl? I think let us respect our leaders, all in equal measure.
Yeah, Senator Cherargei, be
Mr. Speaker,
sensitive to what you say.
no, but I wouldn't want to reply that. Let me proceed. So, Mr. Speaker, another aspect that I want to and of course you can't substantiate the obvious. The brand Kenya, Build Kenya, and I agree with Senator Wetangula, Mr. Speaker, that as a country, instead of
There's another point of order, Senator.
To continue misbehaving and calling other people bad names when you have been advised not to do it. What is wrong with saying I apologize? Why do you personalize the office? And why do you call CSs flower girls or women in general? I think this is very serious and he should withdraw that statement, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ross, Senator Ross Nyamunga.
Can I get, thank you so much, Speaker. Senator Cherargei, apart from referring to a whole cabinet secretary, a flower girl, also referring to women as slay queens. I don't know what that means because the women also get, who are in athletics or any other sporting, they get the money. And I don't think that it's only the girls who eat the money and the opposite does not eat. So I don't think Senator Cherargei is really in order. What is treating us to this morning?
Senator.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me a chance to also raise my concern. I just wish you could make Senator Cherargei to apologize. Reducing a whole female CS to a flower girl, that is an abuse of women.
Yes, Senator Shionga.
Yes, Madam Zube.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I want to comment on what Senator Cherargei just said. And I wonder where he gets his confidence just to undermine positions of people, especially among CEF. Amina has done so much to the sports fraternity. So with due respect, I suggest, Honorable Speaker, that you make a ruling that he is apologizing to all the women of Kenya, Honorable Speaker, and he refrains from using abusive and undermining language to the women of Kenya who are in leadership positions, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Wetangula. Senator Wetangula.
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for us to deviate from the debate? You know, what the young senator from Nandi said is a matter of semantics. It's a matter of semantics. You can call, you go to the UK Parliament and you say our ministers call dimwits and all manner of descriptions. Just for a member who doesn't appreciate what you are doing doesn't mean he's abusing you. So, Mr. Speaker, people should not display their limited knowledge of English language in this debate and reduce it to an abuse. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the distinguished senator for Wajir was even out of order by saying Senator Cherargei is misbehaving. Senators don't misbehave. The language you use is either in order or out of order. It's not a misbehavior. I would encourage you, Mr. Speaker, to bring this to a close so that we carry on with the substance of the debate.
Yes, what's your point of order, Senator Ali?
Senior member of this House in order to try and tell us that Senator Cherargei is not out of order, when he knows very well. How do you call people flower girls? How do you call ladies in this country who are doing very serious business? And he comes and makes us feel as if we have said nothing in this House. I think that is wrong, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, Senator Cherargei, I think you can hear the reaction. I want to direct that you withdraw and apologize.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't expect this to degenerate to gender issue. But all the same, I want to say that I didn't in any way disregard the women.
No, I said I directed that you
Okay,
withdraw
Mr. Speaker, I
and
apologize.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Speaker,
Withdraw
what
and
I was
apologize,
saying-
Senator Cherargei.
I apologize.
You withdraw and apologize.
I
That is-
withdraw that word flower girl
And
and apologize and replace the word that
Okay,
she
proceed.
has not efficiently performed in the ministry. So, Mr. Speaker, as I was proceeding before it degenerated into a gender issue, Mr. Speaker, I am saying that the ministry has underperformed, now that you don't want to mention the minister in charge, by ensuring that we have double
he has.
taxation. I think the Nani should stop behaving rowdy in the house. You should be called rowdy. Because you can't be ordering people. He has been insulting me the whole day, misbehaving, he's not apologizing.
Order. What's your point of order,
Mr.
Senator?
Speaker, you should bring
Who is Nani in this House?
Senator
If you are
Cherargei.
referring to me, say Senator Dr. Ali.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, if you have noticed, Senator Dr. Ali has been restless, he's shouting, can he apologize? Why doesn't he keep quiet and listen to other people? So, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, that on the issue of double taxation, and we have seen the winnings, Mr. Speaker, that the winnings you are taxed maybe in Europe and in America. Then when you come, Mr. Speaker, here you are being taxed again. And I said earlier, the ministry should do something. Our president should do something. The ministry, the Kenya Revenue Authority should work and ensure. And I think the president will only work when there is a proper advice from the minister in charge. But since there is incompetence within that ministry, it will always be hard to try and erase and ensure that double taxation is not done to at least, Mr. Speaker. It is so paining when young people are running hard through their sweat and blood. They win, they are being taxed in the host countries in their winnings, and they are being taxed at home, and yet you want them to be brand Kenya. Yet you take the same money and give it to brand Kenya. I use an example where Eliud Kipchoge, when he was running under 2 hours in Inos, he was able to 500 million viewers were watching. 799,000 were streaming live. Which are the branding that this country needs? And I think, Mr. Speaker, we need to move forward as a country and ensure that we remove this issue, Mr. Speaker. Clause 7, I think it talks about the independence of the agency, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say that it is so, where these samples are being taken, when a slit is being taken, the samples, Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, the presence of the athlete. And I think now that this law has been criminalized, and it is good my senior counsel, Senator James Orengo, is here, that now the burden of proof has moved from athlete to the person that is accusing the athlete. Because before this law was being criminalized, Mr. Speaker, it was on the burden of the proof of the athlete to be able to prove himself either innocent or not of using these performance-enhancing drugs. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon our athletes, Mr. Speaker, and I agree that pharmacies and hospitals and doctors that are got to be part of the syndicate of providing performance enhancement drugs, PEDs, they must also be punished, Mr. Speaker. And that is very important, Mr. Speaker, that we say this the truth. Because even agents and coaches, Mr. Speaker, the Athletics Kenya and the ministry in charge, that is why I was saying There is moribunds and incompetence within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Sports, because how do you allow agents and coaches to come to country to mislead our youth? And then when that athlete is being caught, you punish only the athlete, you leave the agents and the coaches, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the Athletics Kenya, the Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they must do proper vetting on the aspect of coaches and agents who come and manage our athletes, Mr. Speaker. Because when you look at those contracts that are being signed, Mr. Speaker, it is always lopsided in favor of agents and the coaches who sometimes, Mr. Speaker, go ahead and mislead the athletes that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker. So the pharmacies, the hospitals, the doctors, the agents and coaches who normally are caught, who have misled, and it is so sad that people like Jemima Sumgong and many others who have been banned up to 2027 or so. I think my friend Asbel Kiprab are suffering. I saw him the other day tweeting against that issue. They should be appellate mechanisms, Mr. Speaker, because I was talking to a friend of mine who was caught in this issue, and they said when the samples were being analyzed, they were not in even presence. They were just being told by the international federations of athletics just to appear, and there are no appellate mechanisms, Mr. Speaker. So I think the independence of agency is very important. The issue of taking samples, and I agree that we need to be able, Mr. Speaker, to provide confidentiality, because the way the international body that deals with these issues normally do is not appropriate. I think also when you just walk to a hospital, even if you are having blood tested sample, the doctor does not come and announce to the world that you have malaria or not. I think we should allow the confidentiality because you know the nature of Kenyans. I think the governor of Kisumu, of my good friend Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, the other day in the funeral of Governor Nyagarama, said Kenyans are good at gossiping about the illnesses and diseases of the people. So, Mr. Speaker, we should protect that confidentiality so that we don't create, because image is everything to an athlete, and I think it is very important, Mr. Speaker, that we punish the agents, we punish the coaches, we punish and many other people who are involved in the entire process. And I think Athletics Kenya, the Ministry of Foreign, the Ministry of Sports, Mr. Speaker, we have done well as a country. And I think if there is anything that has brought this country glory and honor and being known across the world, Mr. Speaker, has been the sports. And you remember the legends like the late, unfortunately, his life was cut short, the late Samuel Wanjiru, a renowned world marathon who was doing very well at that time before he passed on in unclear circumstances. And many other athletes, Mr. Speaker, they now David Rudisha. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the life of an athlete for us who have grew up, by the way, don't look at me like this. I used to be a very serious athlete before I came into politics, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the life of an athlete, David Rudisha.
Where was that? In the village or?
Yeah, of course, as in the village, I didn't make it to national stage. Mr. Speaker, when you look like people like David Rudisha, when you look at many athletes, just like in football, the moment they had a tendon rupture or they get an injury, it is always a serious issue. So they are so delicate as they run, and they are running between 18 years and even below 30, Mr. Speaker. And I think, Mr. Speaker, it shows how seriousness we have and at least that we need to protect them. And that is why I was saying, if the ministry was proactive, we should have even in Kapsabet, where we have these areas in Mount Elgon or in somewhere in Bungoma, in Eldoret, in Iten, we should have even a special wing that is only meant to treat and assist the athletes when they get injuries, Mr. Speaker. In those villages, in their training camp, call upon our athletes that the use of performance-enhancing drugs is not good. It is a public health concern. It causes, if you are a man, I'm being told, because I was discussing with some doctors and some of athletics professional bodies, if you are a woman and you use performance-enhanced drugs, you can even become masculine. Your gender can easily change. If you are a man, you lose your issues. You become sterile. You can't sigh anymore. So you will be violating what the Bible says, go ye into the world and fill the world. You have rupture of tendons, Mr. Speaker. Your performance generally in terms of health becomes an issue. So the use of performance-enhancing drugs, and I want to challenge, Mr. Speaker, and call upon our athletes and sportsmen. And I think, Mr. Speaker, finally what I wanted to say is that let us not reduce the issue of anti-doping to be only about athletes, Mr. Speaker. Let us also engage and talk about sports people. Because I think the issue of anti-doping does not only come out only, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of only, does not come out only on athletes. We should also look at footballers, and I think we should not reduce this conversation of anti-doping to be athletes only. Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon that we need to pass this law so that our athletes can continue making money. As I alluded earlier, that over 6 billion Kenya shillings through road races alone, I think around another 1.6 billion through indoor events that was done in Diamond and many other areas, Mr. Speaker. It is a good source of income, but as a country, the way Russia, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, because I can see the light, when the Russia was being accused of doping, you remember how the government fought hard and hard to ensure that they protect the athletes. I want to call upon the government that any policies, the taxation issue, among other issues, Mr. Speaker, we should always have the interest of athletes at heart, Mr. Speaker, so that we protect. As Nandi County, where we are the source of champions, we want to protect athletes like Conseslus Kipruto, others like Unisum, Pamela Chelimo, and many others who have done very well. Chepkosgei, who is known as Eldoret Express, they have brought glory and honor. And I want to assure my colleague senators who are women in this house that you can see I'm mentioning only women athletes. So your hearts should rest, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that we value the role that women are doing in athletics world. But also in management, you must ask women in their management level also that they must work hard for the benefit of also women and men in terms of the issue. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I hope by the end of close of business today, and I want to thank you and colleagues who came out, because it means a lot to us from regions where athletes come from. I want to thank you for cutting short your Christmas break. I can see my brother, Senator James Orengo. This is an honor to have him in the House at this time, Mr. Speaker, and I think it is very important that we came back and ensure that we comply, and it is an avenue that our young people continue to make their livelihood, to make investment in our country, and to give back to the society and motivate and become most of the. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Senator Musurve. Senator Musurve. Okay, Senator Shionga. As we look for them, Professor Sam Ongeri.
That you're taking time to consider this bill so that it becomes law. Honorable Speaker, I would say that it is good that Kenya is among the signatories of this bill, and it means that we are ISO compliant. And it is important, Honorable Speaker, that we fast track this bill so that come 2021, which is just about 3 days away, at least do not lose out on our whole year. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is important, and it is really, we must know that we have to support our athletes, because athletes, survive on athletics for the purpose of, raising fees for their children, for surviving and all that. So if we do not fast track this, then they may also lose out. Honorable Speaker, athletes bring a lot of glory to our country. Some of them come with gold medals, some of them, even spend a lot of their just ensuring that they bring glory to our country. So there's need for us to fast track the bill, and even in fast tracking the bill, I want to thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the center that is started for athletes, that is not complete. And I'm really aligned to the things that you're doing in Bungoma, Honorable Speaker, for the purpose of ensuring that, Kenyans are involved in athletes, Kenyans are involved in many issues, and I'm sure that in case you go back to Bungoma as a governor, hopefully, you're going to complete the project that you have started. And Honorable Speaker, just to get a bit, I'm aware of the Lusaka road, and many people also have praised you for what you really did concerning the road. I'm also on the road. So I want to call you, Honorable Speaker.
You are getting it relevant.
Honorable Speaker, allow me to be relevant.
Honorable Speaker, I would say that athletes rely on athletics for the purpose of getting an income. So there's need to have order in this area. There's need for for us to ensure that this area has sanity. Because Honorable Speaker, sometimes when athletes get into drugs in order to win, that brings a lot of disorder. And I would say, Honorable Speaker, even the centers we're talking about are supposed to be centers that are going to train athletes on how to be orderly when competing in sports, on how to invest also when competing in sports, Honorable Speaker, because sometimes athletes in their heydays, they make a lot of money, Honorable Speaker, but sometimes they waste the money simply because they have not had training on how to use their money. So it is, it is really important that athletes are also trained on how to become, useful and how to become visionary during their heyday. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to taking drugs, some athletes take drugs knowingly. Others take drugs not knowingly. So even in the center, they're supposed to be trained, so that they're cool, so that they don't find themselves taking drugs unknowingly, and eventually then they lose out. We have to nurture the talents of athletes because that is their source of talent. It is their God-given talent, and we have to see how to encourage them. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to also encouraging athletes, there's need for them to be given recognition, national recognition. And I'm aware, Honorable Speaker, that there are some athletes also who are PWDs, and they practice in Paralympics, but sometimes they're not given recognition. There's need to ensure that we're encouraging all forms of athletes so that they're encouraged to continue bringing glory to our country. Honorable Speaker, I want to suggest also that those people who exploit athletes' talent and exploit the expertise they have by ensuring that they act as brokers should also not come in, because athletes should have value for the things that they do for this country. Because when athletes go out of the country, they do not take themselves. They represent a whole nation. They represent Kenya and the nation. And even when they represent Kenya as a nation, they need also for Kenyans themselves, even if they legislative accompany them, so that out there they will feel that we are actually recognizing what they are doing. And Honorable Speaker, most important, athletes should be advised on how to use their money, so that eventually, during the days when they do not have energy at all, they can have indicators of what they did during their heyday. Honorable Speaker, I support this bill, and I hope it's going to see light at the end of the tunnel, so that it becomes law, so that we now see athletes now continuing with their works beginning 2021. Thank you for giving me an opportunity, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Professor Ongeri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me also to weigh in on this bill. It's very interesting because just out of the historical perspective, I was the chairman of Kenya Athletics between 1974 and 1984 for 10 years. And I must state at this stage that during that period of time, we were in the watershed between the amateur athletic running, for no cost, for no payment, for no reward of whatsoever. It was just purely amateur running until we introduced the professional side of it, which is now the track and field, which our athletes are able to get very handsome payouts for any competitive event that they took place in. Now, what happened? In 1976, when we missed out of Montreal Olympics, and then 1980 in Moscow Olympics, the money that we would have used gave birth to the Nyayo Stadium that we are now using today in its present form. That was a contribution of the money from government that would have been used. But then there was then a narrative going out internationally saying, since Kenyans have missed out on the running on track and field, they are likely to perform very poorly. And I think history is a good judge, because at that time, Henry Rono, who was a 10,000-meter runner, consecutively broke the world record within a short space of time. And then the language came out that maybe he was taking the substance-enhancing he was taking the substance that enhanced the performance of his activities, and it was tested and it was negative. And therefore, Kenyans were natural, God-given talent of running, had a natural, God-given talent of running. And therefore, we became alert. I was also a member of the International Amateur Athletic Medical Commission, so I knew the ingoings and the outgoings of this thing. How did the mischief come in? We realized when some of these managers, and I put the word some, not all, some managers realized that they could be able to take the athletes, own them at the expense of the federations that were running these activities. They started giving them ointments which were colored with some drug-enhancing activities. Not our athletes, but other athletes. And at that time, we educated our athletes to be able to keep off from those substances, because then they will be able to curtail their running professionalism. And I remember in Rome, when we had the International Amateur Athletic Congress, I stood out in the Congress saying that we now needed to bring in professionalism in athletics. And I was almost thrown out of that Congress because the idea had not come in through. And I'm glad that today that professionalism of running is the mainstay of earnings for our athletes, not only because they are able to exhibit their talent, but they are also able to bring back home something handsome that can support themselves and their families, so that even when they retire from track and field, they are sustained. What does this bill entail? Since that time, there's been a dialogue. And I think it's always good to remind ourselves that when this bill was being enacted, there were already some standards which had been set. These were the 6 standards that had been set, and I think we might want to refresh ourselves with those standards. First of all, there is the International Standards for Testing and Investigations, which is now a code, a full code that is in place, and there are 6 of them. The International Standard for Laboratories, 2nd, International Standard for Therapeutic Use, exemptions, 3, the International, 4th, the International Standard for the Prohibited List, the International Standard for the Protection of Privacy and Personal Information, particularly to athletes, and the International Standard for Code Compliance by Signatories. Now, these standards are meant to protect both the sport, the athletes, the nations, and the people. And you know, because of the mutability, these things do change. And when we look at the stimulants, narcotics, cannabinoids, and glucocorticoids, these are steroids. These are drug-enhancing performing drugs that athletes take to enhance their performance. And therefore, because they change in the formulations in every way, in every respect, the WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, in connection with ADAC, the Anti-Doping Agency for Kenya, they agreed that one of the things that we now must bring in, a new addition to these 6 codes, is 2. One is the International Education Standard, which is very critical, that we know of. And then the second one is the International Standard for Result Management. These are the 2 elements that have been introduced in this new code. Originally, there were 6 of them. Now there are 2 more additional ones that, apart from them knowing the international laboratories, standardized laboratories, and other agencies, and how to manage the results, and how to manage the complaints and the appeals, they have also added that there is need now to be able to educate the athletes, not only the athletes, but also the organizations who are dealing with some of these athletes, so that they are able to understand what is involved and what are the outcomes if they misbehave or enter into unprofessional use of drugs which are prohibited in this particular sport, in running, whether it's athletics or football or boxing, whatever sport it may be. but I'm now particularly more interested in sports. Therefore, they have introduced these two new codes. These are the ones that are Kenya is being asked to incorporate before 31st day after tomorrow. And therefore, what is before us is a bill which has been looked at by the National Assembly. It's a bill which has gone through the public participation. It's a bill that has also complied with Chapter 10 of our Constitution. It's a bill that has also been checked against the other international laws that have been set, forming the international code. And therefore, these two codes are now being incorporated. And we now see the history. 2004, there were laws which were adopted. Every 5 years, these laws must change. 2009, they changed. Kenya became a member became a signatory, a state party to this international agreement in 2009. In 2015, we adopted this element, and therefore 2020, which is today, ending day after tomorrow, if we don't adopt these new codes, the first 6 codes and the second 2 codes that have been added, and the amendments which have been moved to be able to amend certain aspects of the codes, 1 to 6, and the subsequent 7 and 8, Kenya is likely to be barred and banned from participating in athletics world in the next year. And therefore, it's important, there's a level of urgency that this bill must be passed today. And I think, reading through this bill, I now begin to understand and appreciate why it must be passed today. And I think earlier on, Senator Wetangula did say that there was an element missing in the bill. You'll have to see the area of education. Indeed, when you look at this code, International Standard of Education, it in fact incorporates the level of education that must go both to the athletic world, in this case the WADA, which is World Athletic Anti-Doping Agency, the national or the national organizations, athletic organizations must also be involved in the education and knowledge of what must happen, and of course the athletes themselves must be involved in the education. And that's why this code of International Standard of Education is being incorporated as part of the code that must be passed, as part of the core law that must be factored into this element. And I think, Mr. Speaker, I think it's a very well thought out. And by the way, this has also, at every step of development of this bill, the World Anti-Doping Agency were also involved. They have also bounced back and they've compared it with the other existing laws that have been passed by other international bodies, other national countries, and therefore it's in conformity and it's in the spirit of these laws. What is the purpose of these anti-doping agency laws? The purpose is to be able to preserve the integrity and the health of runners and the athletes. It's very important, it's very critical that you do not allow agents who manipulate some of our athletes to use them as robots and be able to give them doping agencies hoping that they will escape the detection and the testing during the competition and during the track competition or off-season competition, because it's a random checkup and they are caught in the game, and therefore punishments are huge because the athlete pays the ultimate price of being banned from running from track and field. And we don't want to see our athletes who are so natural, who have such a natural ability to run, whose psyche has been made up in a natural way, and therefore the physiological phenomena, the biological phenomena that runs through their body, that runs through their psyche, that runs through everything, is a natural element that is in them, that is giving them the mastery and the win over the rest of the world athletes. And I think we should maintain that naturality, which serves us well, gives us fame and honor for this nation. And I think athletics has been able to bring honor and glory to this country. We should honor our athletes at all times, and we should be able to recognize them. And I'm glad of late there's been a recognition of state honors being given to the athletes wherever they have been, and we've seen it now happening. This is a very good element. And for Athletics Kenya, where I'm the patron, a trustee, rather not a patron, a trustee, I want to encourage them. We've just gone through our 70-year celebrations the other week, and I want to encourage them that one of the things they must do is that they are on the right track. They have cooperated with the WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agencies, and themselves with the ADAC, which is the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya. They must make it a very robust body. They must cooperate. The laws are there to help them to cooperate and agree on how to be able to organize both the athletics body and also the body of athletes who are there. And some of the best elements that will be used for teaching and training are some of the old athletes, and all some who are returning from the ban that they have exhibited during this period of time. Therefore, it's an important bill for this country, for this nation, because if we are deprived of the ability to run, this country will be nowhere in the map. When we have done very poorly in athletics, in politics, it's the sport that has brought us up in one way or the other. And therefore, it's a compensatory mechanism. Therefore, as lawmakers, we have an ultimate responsibility of ensuring that this becomes law today, if not beyond today. Because if we don't do so, we'll be bad. 31st of December, 2 days from now, if this is not into law, then, Mr. Speaker, the eminent happens, that the country of Kenya will be banned from competitive running, whether at the local level, at the regional level, or at the international level. And you can see that would be a total disservice to our athletes. With those few remarks, I thought I should enrich this bill. I've looked through it very carefully last night, and I've also seen the other clauses. I thought that would be offensive, and I've counter-checked with the international standards that are available, and I want to commend it to my colleagues in this Senate that it's a good bill, and it must be passed today so that we can be able to give a gift of New Year to our athletes, so they can now start running the marathon on 1st of January, wherever they are, and break the world records. That is their take. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kangata. Senator Kangata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, you hear me now?
He's not even a switch. He's not even
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me take this opportunity first to congratulate
Order.
Yes, sir.
I want to remind all those who are with us by virtue of the guidelines that I gave, the dress mode and your background. So you are not properly dressed. Therefore, you are out of order. Senator Ali Abdullahi.
Sir, that is the right way to proceed so that members are disciplined wherever they are and they follow the rules. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to support the bill because of the way it's supposed to be assisting many Kenyans. Even if, Mr. Speaker, I find it very odd that this issue was passed in 2015, and Kenya was supposed to ratify any time from that time up to 2021. And then it has gone to the level where the Ministry of Sports just involved the National Assembly in October of this year. And they were taken for a retreat. I don't know why the Senate was not considered that time. Is it because we are second rate or because they don't really care? Where they come and call us last minute when we are supposed to be in our holidays and enjoying ourselves. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think the ministry should have done better in that sense, because bringing this issue in October of this year, and then when the National Assembly passed, they had to revert back to WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency, for concurrence. After that is when they are sending to the Attorney General and then gazetting it in December. Mr. Speaker, I think this is